On Rush Street, in Chicago's upscale restaurant district, the heavy antique door of Clark's opened quietly against the winter twilight. The air outside was sharp with cold, but the moment one stepped inside, warmth and elegance enveloped them. The restaurant, housed in a carefully restored late 19th century building, exuded both history and refinement. Crystal chandeliers, hanging from high ceilings, cast a soft golden glow across the room. Their light shimmered against the pristine white tablecloths and polished silverware, creating reflections that looked like fleeting stars across the tables. For 30 years, Clark's had stood as a symbol of tradition and taste. The wooden floors, preserved from the original construction, had developed a deep, burnished luster. Every step carried the weight of countless evenings, first dates, anniversaries, business deals, and quiet family dinners. The walls, lined with framed photographs of notable patrons and newspaper clippings, whispered stories of the past. At the heart of it all was Becky Clark. Today's specialty is Maine lobster, gently poached with truffle essence, Becky explained to the servers with her usual calm authority. The accompanying seasonal vegetables were delivered this morning from our contract farmers in the Chicago area. Her black chef's coat was immaculate, as if it had never seen a stain despite her grueling hours in the kitchen. At 35, Becky had earned the respect of both critics and loyal patrons. Food journalists often described her as the soul of Clark's. The Chicago Tribune had once called her a chef who perfectly embodies the harmony of tradition and innovation. Reservations were nearly impossible to get. People booked tables months in advance, some even planning trips around the opportunity to dine here. Becky's discipline was legendary. Each morning at 4, she was at the markets before dawn, walking briskly through rows of vendors with an eye that missed nothing. She touched produce gently, almost reverently, and could tell the quality of a cut of fish with a single glance. Her years of training in France, long, lonely years spent in demanding kitchens where every mistake was punished, had shaped her into a chef of rare precision. But it was her instinct, her quiet understanding of balance and flavor, that made her dishes memorable. Many whispered that a Michelin star was not just within reach but inevitable. And yet, despite the growing acclaim, a sense of unease often shadowed her thoughts. Becky, I've just posted photos of tonight's VIP table on Instagram. Look. Sarah, her younger sister, breezed into the kitchen with her usual flair. She held her phone up triumphantly. Already over 1,000 likes in less than an hour. Sarah was the face of Clark's modern image. Public relations, branding, and social media were her domain, always dressed in the latest designer brands. With perfect makeup and an air of confidence, she charmed their wealthy clientele effortlessly. Her smile seemed to capture attention as easily as Becky's dishes did. Becky glanced at the screen, then returned to her chopping board. That's good, Sarah, she replied flatly. Her voice was polite but devoid of warmth. Once, long ago, they had laughed together in this very kitchen, smudging flour across their cheeks while baking cookies under their mother's watchful eye. Now, their exchanges were cool, transactional. Well, Becky, their mother's voice chimed in as she entered the kitchen, heels clicking against the floor. Our guests were very pleased tonight. They praised the wine pairing that Sarah suggested. It's no wonder, the ratings online are through the roof. Thanks to Sarah, we're attracting an entirely new clientele. At this pace, a Michelin star is no longer a dream. Mary Clark moved with elegance, her pearl necklace catching the chandelier light with every step. She spoke with the authority of someone who had long managed not just the restaurant but also the family itself. Yet her praise was never evenly distributed. Your cooking, of course, is wonderful too, she added quickly, though her tone lacked the same energy. But times are changing. Presentation is what matters now. Beside her, John Clark, Becky's father, stood in his gray suit. He nodded silently, as he always did, though he managed the finances of the restaurant with quiet efficiency. His presence within the family was faint, almost ghostly. Becky sometimes thought of him as a shadow, always there, but never truly felt. Sarah, leaning against the counter, chimed in again. Becky, you should try plating in a more Instagram-worthy style. Bright colors, dramatic compositions, that's what's trending. My followers are crazy about it. The metallic rasp of Becky's knife against the sharpening steel cut through the air, sharper than her words. She didn't look up. For her, Food was more than appearance, it was memory, comfort, love, discipline, and art. But here, in her own family's restaurant, that belief felt increasingly lonely. That night, long after the last customer had left and the dining hall had gone dark, Becky remained in the kitchen. She prepared tomorrow's mise en place methodically, the rhythm of her knife steady and unyielding. The walls around her were silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerators. On one wall, an old photograph hung in a modest frame, the Clark family in their early years, smiling brightly in front of the newly opened restaurant. Becky and Sarah stood side by side, still girls, their faces full of dreams. Looking at it now, Becky felt the distance like a canyon. 3 days before her mother's birthday, Becky returned home past midnight. Her high-rise apartment offered a sweeping view of Chicago's winter skyline, where countless lights flickered against the frozen February darkness. She dropped her keys on the counter and glanced at the antique wine glass she had carefully wrapped, a gift she had searched for months to find. Her father had once mentioned her mother's longing for it. Becky had imagined her mother's face lighting up as she unwrapped it at the family dinner. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. "Mom's not feeling well. Doctor said she needs rest. We can't do the birthday dinner this year." Becky froze, staring at the screen. Just yesterday, her mother had been in the restaurant, her heels clicking, her voice strong and commanding. There had been no sign of illness. "Is she okay? Should I come?" Becky typed, her hands trembling. "Don't. She needs rest. Please don't visit." Sarah's reply came quickly. No emojis, no casual tone, just blunt words. Becky's unease deepened. Her mother was 65, yes, but her medical record had always been spotless. She had no chronic illnesses. The last checkup had been perfectly normal. Why the sudden silence now? The following days passed heavily. The restaurant announced a 3-day closure, citing unforeseen circumstances. Becky called her mother's phone, no answer. She emailed, no reply. Even her father stayed unreachable. For the first time in her life, she felt like an outsider in her own family. And then, by chance, Becky discovered the receipt. At her parents' house, tucked carelessly into the kitchen trash, lay a crumpled piece of paper. She smoothed it out with trembling hands. L'Ouro Restaurant, one of the most luxurious French establishments in Chicago. The date, her mother's birthday. Dinner for 4, Dom Perignon. The total amount, over $1,400. The blood drained from Becky's face. She clutched the paper tightly, her knuckles whitening. The birthday dinner had happened, just not with her. The sound of the front door opening jolted her. Her mother's familiar voice floated through the hall. Moments later, Mary entered, followed by John and Sarah. They all stopped short when they saw Becky standing in the kitchen. "Oh, Becky, what a surprise," her mother said smoothly, though her pearl necklace quivered faintly against her throat. "It must have been lonely without the celebration," Mary continued, her tone too casual. Sarah quickly added, "Yes, such a shame. But your health is what matters most." Mother, John, as always, remained silent. Becky said nothing. She only pressed the receipt deeper into her pocket. It wasn't time yet, not here, not now. "Yes," she murmured instead. "Health is the most important thing." She turned and walked out, their voices following her faintly. In her rearview mirror, she saw their shadows framed by the house's glowing windows, shadows that should have felt warm, like family. Instead, they seemed colder than the Chicago night. And in that silence, a quiet determination began to harden inside her. Near the upscale Gold Coast neighborhood, where elegant brownstones stood shoulder to shoulder with high-rise condominiums, Becky inspected the building with quiet resolve. The street outside bustled with the late-morning crowd, young professionals clutching coffees, retirees walking small dogs, the occasional rumble of a delivery truck. The location had everything she needed: good transportation access, a lively atmosphere, and above all, it wasn't far from Clark's. That proximity mattered. She didn't want distance. She wanted to stand in plain sight. "I'll take it," Becky said, her voice steady. The real estate agent blinked, then smiled. "Excellent choice. The Art Deco interior alone is worth the investment. You'll have something truly distinctive." After signing the papers, Becky watched as the deposit was transferred from her account. The sum was large enough to make her palms damp, but it didn't shake her. For 15 years, she had saved without fail, every paycheck trimmed, every indulgence resisted, dreaming that someday she would open her own place. She never imagined it would come under these circumstances, born not of celebration but of betrayal. Yet, as she closed the folder of documents, she felt a calm certainty. That night, she returned to Clark's long after the last customer had gone. When the restaurant was silent except for the hum of the refrigerators, she stood alone in the kitchen, her familiar domain, and began feeding papers into a scanner. Supplier contracts, recipe data, training manuals, customer feedback. Each page represented 10 years of her labor. She had built these networks, these systems. They were hers as much as they were Clark's. Still working late, I see. Her mother's voice broke the stillness. Becky froze, then closed the scanner lid with deliberate care. She turned, expression neutral. Just checking inventory. Mary's heels clicked across the floor as she approached. Oh, is that so? But you should really go home now. Sarah was saying that nowadays, customers prefer Instagram-worthy restaurants to ones that obsess over staying open late. The words were delivered with elegance, but Becky caught the sting in them, like vinegar beneath honey. Her mother's eyes lingered on the scanner, but she said nothing more. Becky gave a small nod, then returned to her work, her face unreadable. The very next morning, Becky began her rounds. She drove out to the farms that had supplied Clark's for decades, her car kicking up thin trails of dust on the country roads outside the city. At each stop, she greeted the farmers warmly. Tom, from Bronx Farm, thank you for always taking care of us. Tom, wiping dirt from his hands, grinned. Miss Becky, we've made it a policy not to ship any vegetables that don't meet your standards. You've kept us honest. His words settled in her chest like a small ember of warmth. These people respected her. They trusted her judgment, not her Instagram presence. From Chicago to Maine, Becky worked her network. She reached out to seafood suppliers at Portland Harbor, men and women she had shared dawn coffees with while watching fishing boats come in. She reconnected with truffle specialists in New York markets, striking personal contracts under her own name. Each agreement was another thread in the tapestry she was weaving, separate from Clark's, wholly her own. Meanwhile, she began shaping her own presence online. Unlike Sarah's polished glamour shots, Becky's posts were quiet portraits of authenticity: fishermen hauling nets at sunrise, a farmer brushing soil from a carrot, baskets of imperfect but beautiful vegetables. Today, from Portland Harbor, Maine, she wrote, a morning scene at Johnson Seafood, which has been providing the finest catches for over 30 years. The images were not flashy, but they resonated. Slowly, steadily, followers began to grow, not thousands overnight, but people who cared about food, about origins, about stories. By April, Becky's decision was final. One evening, just before closing, she stood outside her father's office door, her resignation letter clutched in her hand. Her knuckles whitened, but her face remained calm as she knocked. Father, do you have a moment? John looked up from his papers, startled, as Becky stepped in. Without hesitation, she placed the envelope before him. This is my resignation letter. I wish to leave at the end of this month. His hands trembled as he opened it. Before he could speak, Mary swept in, followed by Sarah. What do you mean? Mary demanded. Her pearls glinted sharply under the light. I want to take on a new challenge, Becky replied evenly. Her mother's voice faltered. But without you. I'll pass on the recipes to my successor, Becky said gently. Don't worry. The room filled with voices, pleading, demanding, protesting, but Becky remained still, like a chef focused on her work. Her decision was made. The change was immediate. Clark's new chef was competent, but competence could not replicate Becky's hand. Within weeks, regular customers noticed. The seasoning isn't the same, Mrs. Grace murmured to a waiter. Where's Becky? Staff fumbled for explanations. Rumors spread. Critics grew sharper. By May, Becky unveiled her new project, Maison Becky. The building she had chosen in the Gold Coast had been transformed into a space of elegance and intimacy. Its Art Deco details gleamed, restored to former glory. Inside, Sunlight streamed through tall windows onto polished counters and rows of gleaming copper pots. Unlike Clark's, it was not a restaurant but a school, a place to teach. Today, Becky told her first group of students, "We'll start with something simple but essential: how to choose seasonal vegetables." Her voice carried conviction. She spoke not of trends, but of respect for ingredients, for process, for tradition. Students leaned forward eagerly, hanging on her words. Word spread quickly. Local media took notice. Perfect balance of tradition and innovation. One critic wrote, "Chicago's food connoisseurs are watching Becky Clark's new challenge with keen interest." Applications poured in. Within months, the waiting list stretched to half a year. Maison Becky was thriving. Meanwhile, Clark's struggled. Recent dishes may look beautiful, the Tribune noted, but in focusing on Instagram presentation, they have neglected the soul of flavor. Customers canceled reservations. Sarah's frantic social media campaigns could not mask the decline. Mary's voice, once sharp with authority, grew laced with anxiety. 6 months later, Becky returned to her parents' home. The house looked the same, but it felt different, smaller. Somehow, she rang the bell, and the pause before the door opened seemed endless. Her father appeared, his gray suit wrinkled, his posture bent. "Becky?" His voice had lost its certainty. Inside, Mary and Sarah waited in the reception room. An open wine bottle and 4 glasses sat on the table, as if they had rehearsed this meeting. "It's been a while," Mary said, her voice too bright. Her pearls trembled against her throat. "Sister, your cooking school has quite a reputation," Sarah added, her smile brittle. She clutched her phone like a lifeline. "Thank you," Becky replied simply, taking her seat. On the wall, a photo of the family from 30 years ago looked down upon them, 4 smiling faces, once united by dreams. The distance between then and now was immeasurable. "Actually, we need to discuss something," John began. His voice wavered. "The restaurant is in trouble," Mary admitted. Behind her careful makeup, exhaustion showed. "Reservations are vanishing. Even regulars are gone," Sarah said, her phone screen reflecting Clark's declining ratings. "Please come back," Mary pleaded. "Without you? We're family, aren't we?" Sarah added softly. Becky's expression shifted. Slowly, she reached into her handbag and withdrew a folded receipt. She laid it on the table. "This." The color drained from her mother's face. "It's from Mother's birthday, the one that was supposedly cancelled because of her health." Her voice was calm, but each word landed like a knife. "A full-course dinner for 4, Dom Perignon. Total, $1,400. She recited the numbers with precision, as if reading a recipe. Mother's illness, the closure announcement, the words. It must have been lonely without the celebration. Becky's eyes met theirs, steady and unyielding. "Why did you exclude me?" The silence was suffocating. Her mother's lips trembled. Her father looked away. Sarah's fingers fumbled with her phone. "Because we're family," Sarah whispered weakly. Becky rose to her feet. Her voice, when it came, was soft but final. "Yes, we were family." The past tense froze the room. She turned toward the door. Their voices followed her, pleading, broken, but she did not look back. Outside, the autumn wind brushed her cheeks. Leaves, red as fire, spiraled down the street. She started her car, glanced in the mirror. Her family stood in the doorway, small and diminished, shadows of what they had once been. Something ended in Becky's heart at that moment, and something new, stronger, unshakable, had already begun.